some stuff popped up.
Okay. Hello. Breastfeeding twins can be a really stressful time for a lot of moms. Twins are a whole different ballgame, from NICU hospital stays to pumping to worrying about making enough milk, not to mention feeding two babies at the same time. But it doesn't have to be so hard. So today we've got a breastfeeding expert joining us to give us some tips and twin hacks to make things better. I'm Lindsey Lowrance. I'm a therapist in Colorado, and I help twin moms go from drained and distracted to powerful and fulfilled. One of the ways I do that is through offering quality counseling, easy and convenient from your own home through video chat that's very secure. That way, moms, busy moms, can get their self-care in without all the hassle. And today I've got Amanda Ogden joining me. Thanks for coming, Amanda.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so please tell us a little bit about yourself and then we'll dive in.
Well, hi, Lindsay. I am one of the co-founders of the Mamahood. The Mamahood is a business here in Denver, and we serve families from the minute they know they're pregnant until their kid is about age 3. So happily, I've been able to work with lots and lots of moms of twins. And I have some good ideas to share today. My background is I'm a nurse. I was a labor and delivery nurse, and then I started focusing on breastfeeding support. And I've been doing that for over 20 years now.
Wow, yes, you are a wealth of knowledge, and we're so glad to have you and be able to talk about twin-specific issues that come up. Yeah, so twins. You know, one of the first things that comes to mind is just at the very start, right? When twins are born, what are some things that we can do, you know, that twin moms can keep in mind to help make that breastfeeding go a little smoother?
Absolutely. I think preparing while you're pregnant is so important, and knowing that twins frequently come early. Twins also are, there's a little bit of an increased risk of a cesarean birth. Mm-hmm. And so those two things make breastfeeding challenging with one baby or with two. So knowing that babies that are born early are not great at breastfeeding until their age-adjusted term. So if you have twins that are born at 37 weeks, you're going to have 3 weeks of jumping through hoops before they start to get better at breastfeeding. It doesn't mean they shouldn't practice at the breast. It just means we don't expect them to take a full feeding and protect the milk supply until they're a little bit older. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, that means pumping with the hospital grade pump, at least until the babies are age adjusted term.
Yeah, that gets exhausting, but I'm sure we are going to mention some ways that that can make pumping a little easier too. But while we're on that subject of like in the hospital, and you know, a lot of twin babies have NICU stays where they have to stay in the hospital for different reasons. What are some of the common things that come up that you know about or that you can give some advice to?
So again, it depends on how early the babies are born. I can think of several scenarios. A mama that I'm working with right now has 27-week twin babies, and they're doing very, very well, but they're going to be in the NICU for a long time. So they're being fed with a tube through their nose right now, the NG tube, and she is feeding the hospital grade pump. She's got a great milk supply because tiny babies don't take a lot of milk. So we've got a lot of time to build her supply. One of the things I always say is if we have milk, we have options. Early babies, they frequently want to add fortifier to the milk, and that's just something that you can't really get around. They're going to add a little powdered supplement to the milk to increase calcium and phosphorus, and in theory to add some calories to the milk. So for that mama, the most important thing she can do is focus on feeding the pump so she can feed the babies. And as soon as the babies are stable, as much skin to skin as possible.
Okay.
So before they can latch, they're going to be on her body. Removing milk from the breast will be step number 5.
Okay. So don't expect too much. Just try and have them there on your skin and just kind of get them comfortable with that or familiar with that, I guess.
Exactly.
And do a lot of the pumping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another scenario of a mom I'm working with right now is babies were born at 37 weeks. She is working on building her supply. She's got about half a supply right now. One of the babies needs oxygen, and the other baby is on room air. So in this scenario, because they are still in the hospital, they're able to access human milk, donor milk from the mother's milk bank. Here in Colorado, that's pretty much the protocol. Babies born early while they're in the hospital, they can use donor milk. If you're in a different part of the country, you might have to work harder to make that happen. But if you can lobby for that, that's always safer for the baby's tummies to have human milk over any other kind of milk if we can avoid it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned even with that, like that sometimes if they're smaller, like the first mama you mentioned, you might still need to like supplement with some powdered like formula type stuff. But it's nice to know that there's also this option of having donated breast milk.
Right. And knowing that, funny enough, usually one baby is a better breastfeeder than the other baby. So usually one baby, and Lindsay, do you remember which of your kiddos was better in the beginning?
Yes, absolutely. And she is still the bigger eater.
So usually, and the nice thing about that is that baby's actually helping to protect the supply for their sibling. Not right at that time, because the baby that's better is getting more of the milk directly from the breast. But because it's building your supply, there will be more milk down the line for the other little sibling. Okay. So it's a very typical scenario that one baby is a little bit stronger at the breast than the other.
Yeah, I think that does play out a lot of times. And, you know, with that too, I wonder, you had mentioned something to me, and I don't know, you know, if it's a great thing to talk about here, but when you need to boost calories for the smaller baby that maybe isn't as efficient at the breast, you know, previously you told me about like a milkshake type thing. I wonder if that's something worth mentioning for other twin moms.
Absolutely. So if you have plenty of milk, you can have the stronger baby nurse first, and then you pump the second half of the milk because it's higher in fat and calories. But we don't want to mistake the idea that somehow the milk in the beginning is no good. It's beautiful. It's just high in protein, and nature's smart. It saves the fattier milk for the last of the feed. So if we fed our babies dessert first, they wouldn't be hungry for their soup and salad and entree. Anyway, but if we're trying to get a little one to grow, we can sort of do something fancy called lactoengineering, which just means we let either the pump or the stronger baby take out the first milk, and then we pump the last of the milk and feed that to the baby who needs to grow. And that's only appropriate for about a week's worth of time. But sometimes that's one of the hurdles to getting out of the hospital is they want the babies to grow a little bit faster than maybe they are able to. So we can sort of enrich their caloric intake without increasing the volume.
That's great to know. Yeah, you know, as we're speaking about hospitals, there are some that are very breastfeeding friendly and really set you up for success and have a lot of support and good guidance. And then unfortunately, there are some hospitals, some NICUs that kind of have you jump through more hoops or, you know, don't make it quite as easy. And we don't always get to choose or know this ahead of time, but I'm curious, one, if you do have any advice for moms that are picking hospitals, like what would they look for to know if it's breastfeeding friendly? But two, can we overcome it? Like, is there something they can do if the hospital isn't very breastfeeding friendly?
Absolutely. One of the things to know is as long as we're protecting the milk supply with pumping, we will be able to overcome any challenge that happened in the NICU. So if you find yourself in a NICU that's great at medical care but not great at breastfeeding support, don't feel like your breastfeeding relationship has been sabotaged. As long as you keep pumping and protect your milk supply, everything that was done can sort of be undone. We can retake normal once the babies are home. Now, that said, some things to look for. Mostly, do they allow a lot of skin to skin? There are some hospitals that are a little bit have antiquated information and don't understand that having the babies on the mom's body is the safest place for them to be. Now, this is even babies with pretty serious medical issues. If we can get them on the mom's body, they do much, much better. So even if they have a CPAP for breathing, that's the machine that helps the babies breathe. As soon as they're medically stable, there's no reason they can't go skin to skin. And then planning for the skin to skin sessions. Ideally, we do a whole sleep wake cycle, which is about 90 minutes. So let's say the nurses do their cares, they do the feeding or get the feeding started. They help you get situated, planning to sit there for 90 minutes. So that means taking care of your needs, making sure you've had food, making sure you have water with you, making sure you've gone to the bathroom and you've got your phone so that you can peacefully sit there and let the babies stay skin to skin. If they'll let both babies be there, great. But if not, then you'll alternate where your partner will do one baby while you do the other. So I think more than breastfeeding support, I would look for skin to skin in a NICU.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really great advice. I think a lot of NICUs, like you said, they're great at medical care. And so sometimes they might have very strong opinions about, but leave the baby alone, let them do this thing on this machine or whatever, only have small amounts where they get to just be held maybe away from the cords or whatever. And so that can be challenging, but it sounds like that's really important. That's a big, important piece for making everything go smoother, no matter what else is going on.
Right. So if we think about that baby in the 4th trimester, a baby that's been born a little bit early has even more weeks added to that 4th trimester. So for 3 months post-birth, we're trying to fire and wire the baby's brain. The mama and the babies are a symbiotic unit. What's super cool is if one of your twins is chilly, cold, and one is too warm, and both are on your body will thermoregulate each kid to make them the right temperature without you knowing you're doing anything.
That's awesome.
Like, bodies are amazing. If your baby's having trouble maintaining their O2 saturation, that means that the alarms keep going off because O2 saturation goes down. On your body, they'll be a lot more stable. For you, for the mama and the partner, it decreases your stress to have the baby skin to skin. So all of the oxytocin receptors are being triggered on your chest, and that'll make your anxiety go way down. So if you're feeling stressed, that's a great time to do skin to skin. We need to worry a little bit less about the early baby taking milk out of the breast and more about protecting the supply with pumping and doing a lot of skin to skin. Because it's a party trick for a 37-weeker to take milk out. Sometimes they do, but to depend on it, I think we've missed the boat. If our goal is 100% breastfeeding by the time they're 40 weeks and older, then we need to focus more on feeding the silly pump. And I call it silly just because no one likes to feed the pump.
No, you feel like a cow. You're hooked up to this machine. It's not like that wonderful baby bonding moment that you had hoped for.
It is not cozy. It is not. But understanding that machine is protecting your supply. And I always like to think, what did we do in the cave? There would have been twins born in the caveman time. So in the cave, we would have handed the little tinies off to another mama with lots of milk, and she would have hand fed them, and we would have borrowed somebody's 5-month-old. The new mom would have nursed the 5-month-old, which would have driven up your milk supply, because we know the more milk you take out in the early weeks, the more milk you have at week 3. And then as soon as the mama of the twins had lots of milk, we would have swapped back. So we've always solved this problem. Now we just use a machine to solve the problem. In the caveman, that machine was just an older baby. Now it's a hospital-grade pump. And then talking a little bit about pumps. In the hospital setting, the hospital-grade pump is definitely the best piece of gear. When you are home, there are lots of great pumps. So once you have a full supply, you don't need the hospital-grade pump anymore. So a lot of moms are using the Spectra or the Medela. Those are great pumps, but they're not great for building a supply. So they're not great as an artificial older baby to build a milk supply. The hospital-grade pump, the Symphony pump, is the best at that right now.
Okay. Yeah, so while, especially, if babies have a NICU stay, then it's easy, you're already there, you use the pump. But what if the twins are born, 36, 37 weeks, enough to where, and maybe they don't have health issues, enough to where they discharge home just like, regular full-term babies would. What do you do in that situation when you still need to build up the supply?
Exactly. So we call those Those babies that don't have any medical needs, but they're still a little bit preterm, a little bit early, we call them cute and unhelpful, meaning they love to try to get to the breast. They'll get there, they'll start to feed, and then they fall asleep. So they're sleepier than a 40-week baby. They lack the endurance, and they also kind of fake us out. They'll get on the breast and look like they're nursing great, but if we do a pre and post weight test to see how much they actually transferred, it's not usually a full feed. So in that scenario, again, from 36 weeks until 40, focus on a lot of skin to skin, a lot of practice time at the breast, but feeding the pump and bottle feeding the babies. And I think this is an important point. Bottles do not mess up breastfeeding for a baby that's born before 40 weeks. They don't. And the reality of twins is you are going to be using bottles more than a mama who has a singleton. And it doesn't mess up breastfeeding. Lindsay, did you have to use some bottles early on with your babies?
Yes, absolutely. You know, and with my singleton, my first time around, I didn't have to do any of that. You know, it kind of went by the book of what to expect. And then this time around, the around the clock pumping and using bottles, there was just a lot more to it to figure out. And I think that's part of this twin specific, like, please give us some hacks here, because it makes it a little bit more challenging, I think.
Right. So one of the things is to not feel like it's not working when the babies aren't breastfeeding great. Instead of focusing on, Lindsay, I see that my computer is getting ready to run out of batteries.
Oh,
so
no.
I'm a plug. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Some comments you can take, and I'm going to find a plug really quick. One moment.
Take a moment. That's part of having Facebook Live for sure. All right. So I'm going to take a moment and talk a little bit, just while we're waiting for Amanda to come back with her computer plugged in. I'm going to talk a little bit about stress, being a new twin mom and trying to figure out so many different things all at once. Like I said before, it can be really overwhelming. And, you know, I think having some tips and tricks, being more prepared, can really help with that stress, so that you're not feeling kind of on edge about everything or wondering if you're doing it right. It's also very important to take care of yourself and make sure that you're eating, make sure you're drinking plenty of water, try and get some sleep. We will, you know, try and touch base with Amanda about sleep too later on in the episode, but definitely dealing with your stress the best that you can and trying to get some support and some encouragement is really helpful in these, you know, the first few months, but even ongoing as life is, you know, all changing with twins and adjusting to everything. And so having your partner be supportive is great. Having, you know, other moms, a community, having your family around if you do, if they can be supportive of breastfeeding. And so we'll also pick Amanda's brain a little later about, you know, what can people do to be supportive of those breastfeeding moms and make things a little bit easier, because ultimately this show is about making it less stressful.
Hi, everyone. I'm back. I am so sorry.
Yeah, no.
Heard it.
Okay, so we were talking, let's see, we said pumps and hospital grade. What if, you know, the babies go home and you don't have access to a hospital grade pump?
Okay. So if you don't have access to a hospital grade pump, ideally you have access to a pump that is a decent machine. The problem right now is one of the machines that's given out frequently doesn't work well. So if you're finding that pumping isn't working for you, it may be that your insurance company gives you a pump that's not a great one. So the pumps that are working are the Medela and the Spectra. There's a few others that are working as well, but many of them don't. So some of them make an ointment and they decided to make a pump. And that one doesn't work well, right? So people should sort of, I always think, stay in their lane.
Mm-hmm.
And so doing some research to find a pump that most moms find work for them.
Okay. I think that's good feedback. How do we make sure that we're making enough milk for 2 babies? Because I think that that is a huge stressor. I've heard that come up so much across the board with pretty much every twin mom that doesn't go straight to formula. You know, how do we know if our babies are getting enough? And will it just naturally happen, or do we have to do something about it?
That's why weight checks weekly in the early weeks are important, and weight checks on a reliable scale, and a naked baby to a naked baby. So if you're going to your pediatrician's office, that counts as one scale. So their scale to their scale, growth over time. The growth they're going to be looking for is an ounce a day. So in those early months until they're about 3 months old, an ounce a day is about what babies grow, sometimes a little bit less. So if the babies are growing, you've got a full milk supply. The nice thing is there's time to build a full milk supply. There's also not, in my opinion, it's not ever too late to increase milk supply. So I think we have a myth that all the milk you're ever going to make is going to happen in the first 10 days. That is not my clinical experience. As long as we've addressed the underlying issues. So if there were hormonal issues that made it difficult to get pregnant, we need to address hormonal stew. That's the way I have of thinking about prolactin and estrogen and testosterone and things that are naturally in your body. We need you to have a good hormonal stew. Lots of times twins are because the family had IVF. So if there were hormonal challenges to getting pregnant, we may need to address those hormonal challenges to make milk. If a mom had any kind of blood sugar issues, maybe she's not diabetic but pre-diabetic, or had polycystic ovarian syndrome, we'll need to correct for that hormonal stew. And there's some easy ways to do that. The other thing to know is once you've hit a full supply, you're there. So the crazy thing is a baby that is now age adjusted 4 weeks old, so 44 weeks old, is eating ish about 20 to 27 ounces a day. So if by that time you're making 40 ounces of milk, you've got a full supply. A 4-month-old baby still eats the same amount. An 8-month-old baby still eats the same amount. So I think mama's always worried they're going to be chasing their tail. Like they'll never be able to keep up and keep up and keep up. So once you've hit it, you're there. So loosely speaking, a full supply for a set of twins is 50 ounces a day. But they don't start out eating that much. So we've got time to get that ramped up. So feeding the machine and getting as close as you can get. And then feeding the babies, and they'll be growing. So like tiny babies are eating maybe only 10 ounces a day. And then they're eating 12 ounces a day. So it'll go up incrementally. Okay. You've got time.
So I know a lot of moms get really stressed out about this number, and they look at how much, especially right at the very beginning, like, oh, I'm only pumping this much, or, oh, in a day, like you just said, like 10 ounces or something. And I think they're looking at that higher number for the older baby. So what do you suggest to kind of make that a little bit less stressful, like put their minds at ease? At what point should they, be worrying about it? And what age of the baby is it okay that it's a smaller amount?
I mean, here's the real answer. The real answer is even if you only made enough for one kid. So let's say your body can produce 24 ounces a day. Each kid is getting half their food from the mama and half their food from another source, either donor milk or gifted milk or formula. That's amazing because we know as little as 3 ounces a day of mama's own milk is where we see a health difference outcome. Wow. So there was a study done with NICU babies and twins, and the ones that were getting 100 mils or 3 ounces of mama's own milk, that's where there was a health difference. And very, very recently, in the last few days, this amazing study just came out that you can inoculate donor milk with your own milk. And we're talking a very small amount of mom's own milk. It changes the biochemistry of the donor milk to make it match more closely mom's own milk.
Wow.
I mean, bodies are amazing. So even if you were making 1 ounce per day per kid, you can still inoculate their donor milk with your milk to help their gut flora be healthier.
Yeah, I was just going to say, being kind of in the breastfeeding world, I've been around a lot of breastfeeding moms and talked about these things. But I think not everybody understands exactly how valuable breast milk is to the baby. And you just mentioned like gut health, but can you mention a little bit more about what that means, inoculating,
Sure. So,
that?
And again, I'm quoting a study I read last night at bedtime. So, but it does seem to be everywhere on Facebook. And if you look for this study, it came from the National Institute of Health. And it was basically saying that we can take some of mom's, so donor milk has been given by moms who have too much milk. It goes to the mother's milk bank. They have to pasteurize it. So it loses a little bit of the important bacteria that's important for the baby's gut. So a lot of the milk that mamas make isn't food for the baby. It's actually food for their gut flora. Gut flora is important for long-term health. So by taking just a little bit of the mom's own milk that has her healthy bacteria in it, it grew bacteria in the donor milk that was a little bit sterilized. It's not completely sterilized. This is sort of, again, a way of thinking of it.
Right.
It put all of the good flora that those babies would have been getting from the mama into the milk. Why is this important? Well, we know that human milk for human beings is always the best food if we can access it. But I think the important thing to remember is that if a mom isn't making 100%, it shouldn't be 100% or nothing. You can make some milk. Let's say you decided you could not pump 8 times a day and maintain a supply. If you could pump 5 times a day, I overheard a little bit while I was scrambling for a cord, a little bit about sleep issues. So let's say family comes into town. You've now had babies that were in the NICU. You're so tired. You can take a pump vacation for a night where you say, I am not feeding babies or the pump, and I'm sleeping for 8 hours. That might give you the energy to say, okay, I can start trucking on again. Nothing is won or lost by taking a temporary break so that you do save your sanity. You all are really hard workers, but this is a long haul process. Most twin mamas are not breastfeeding easily until those babies are about 3 months old. It's still jumping through a lot of hoops until then. The idea of tandem nursing, where you're feeding both babies at the same time, is a party trick when the babies are little. Like, you might do it once in a while, but mostly that's a goal you work toward. Where when they're a little bit older, when everybody's a little bit more adept, when everything's a little less, you're having better coordination, then those babies will nurse at the same time. So knowing that we're taking it step by step by step to get to the place where it's easy. And knowing that if you do get to that place, it will make your life easier. By far easier than having to prepare bottles and all of that. But I think lactation providers misunderstood this and made it seem like if a mama couldn't make a full supply, she shouldn't even try. That is not true. That's not true. That's not what the research says. So a mama should feel successful no matter how much amount of milk she's making. She is succeeding. It just isn't perfect. And perfection is something I think if you have kids, you quickly find out that is an unattainable goal no matter what we do.
Absolutely. It goes right out the window.
Oh, yeah.
Or at least it should. Otherwise, you're just going to lose your sanity.
Totally. I have teenagers. And so that has been beat out of me, that perfection is ever attainable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's really nice. It's encouraging and hopeful to hear that it's not all or nothing, and that any little bit that a mom can do is going to be a big benefit for their babies. And they can take breaks, or they can mess it up, or, whatever, but you can recover.
Yeah. And I think this study just proved even less than that number I usually quote, which is 3 ounces a day. this just showed that even less than that, we could have 1 ounce of mama's milk, put a few drops in each serving of donor milk, and we've now put good bacteria into all of their meals. Like, bodies are amazing.
That's great. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the mama who is unable to make milk or decides that that is not something that she wants to do or able to do. Lactation consultants also misunderstood that breastfeeding was the only way to bond. That is false. It is the place that bonds. So when a baby is breastfeeding, they're in the right place, but it isn't milk coming out of the breast that did the bond. It's the place that bonds. So partners get a bond with the baby the minute they can hold them skin to skin. So the minute we're holding our babies skin to skin on our bodies, we are bonding. I remember seeing a mama holding her baby on her chest, and she was lamenting that she had not been able to breastfeed, and her heart was broken. She said, "I never bonded with my baby." That is a construct that, unfortunately, lactation providers misunderstood. We messed it up. That is not true. No matter how you feed your baby, if you hold your baby, you kiss your baby, you are bonded. I feel very passionate about that.
Yeah, I think that's really important for all moms to hear that and to know that, because like you said, we can't be perfect. Sometimes things get in the way, or it's really hard, and moms have to make the choice that's best for them and their families. But it helps to know that just anybody, no matter what the situation is, no matter what the choice, any parent can bond with their baby with that skin to skin time and just have them there on their chest. I think that's, again, really encouraging.
Yeah. I think it's important to remember that there's a hierarchy of food if we do have choices. So also, while any amount of milk is better than no milk at all, we should shoot for the moon. So if we can, 100% of mom's own milk is always best. But if we don't have that choice, then asking for donor milk from the human milk bank is our next best choice. If we don't have donor milk, because it's very cost prohibitive once you've left the hospital, most families can't afford to use that product. If you have a friend that has a freezer stash and she's willing to give you milk, that is a really great option, as long as that mom is healthy and that baby is healthy. It is not an unsafe thing to do. Last choice is formula, of course. Happily, we have formula, which is food. It's not our first choice, but it's absolutely food for the baby. So if they're getting half their milk from you or a quarter of their milk from you, and the rest is a different type of milk, that's just fine.
Yeah, that's great. And with that skin to skin, it sounds like part of the important thing, not just having them there on the chest, but not having like clothing or blankets in the way. Is that part of it, or does that matter?
I mean, ideally, the baby would love it if they were just in their diaper, and if they were placed. They want to be face down, their hands up to the side, their head turned, and the baby should be in kissing distance. So when they are in exactly that position, their airway is nice and straight, and they're very, very safe. So I love baby wearing, but the babies that are born early or even in the first 6 weeks, they're too small for all the carriers. They get too slumped. And in that slumped position, they may have an airway that's not protected. So what I love about skin to skin on your chest is that they are in exactly that sniff position. Here at the Mamahood, we finally found a product that's inexpensive, that acts sort of like a kangaroo pocket, and we call it the Hug Me Top. And a Hug Me Top that would normally fit a singleton term baby would fit 2 babies at the same time. So you can tuck both of them and wear this Hug Me Top and put it on. And we're happy to mail it to anybody who lives anywhere. So if you're thinking, what do I need, and you're still pregnant, this is a good piece of gear. Mamas need their breasts, they need to hold the babies, and we need a practical way that keeps the babies on your body and leaves you hands-free. So it's not necessarily safe to walk around, although you can. It's mostly for when you're sitting and resting, babies are skin to skin in that device. We have pictures of it online at themamahood.com. It's just a good piece of gear. Hospitals are now sort of using a more temporary solution. They're making a tube top out of hat material, the pink and blue hat material, but it's too stretchy and it won't last. So we looked really hard for a product that was going to be something that worked for the long term. something that you put over any shirt that you're already wearing, and it keeps the babies in the right place. They outgrow it. So by the time they're 6 weeks old, you will be using carriers.
Mm-hmm.
Someday I wish there would be skin-to-skin friendly hospitals who then told mamas, you know what, you're going to be breastfeeding. We're just going to protect your supply, get the kids bigger, feed them. And then as soon as they're adept and able to do this, you're going to have a full milk supply, and they're going to spend as much time as possible on your body. It's shifting. It's getting closer to that. Now, at least in the Denver area, it is protocol for them to be there. They no longer wig. Sometimes they still wig about the early tiny babies, but with a little bit of nudging, they're getting closer and closer because they have seen that the babies are safer there, actually. Babies that are hooked up to all the monitors, we can see their oxygen shoot up. We see their heart rate come down. We see their respiratory rate get rhythmical on the mama's body versus in the isolate. So that's why as much as we can do that, we should.
Yeah, it sounds like it's so important and that it makes a big difference. Is that the same for C-section mamas? You had mentioned, a lot of times twin moms have to, have a C-section. What do you do as far as, skin to skin or starting breastfeeding, and if there's any specific challenges that they might face?
Absolutely, mostly protecting the incision. So we would get the mama all settled and comfortable before we bring the babies to her. She would place the Hug Me top if she had one, or frankly, any tank top in the hospital, as long as it doesn't have that shelf in it, the bra shelf. So just a regular tank top. Make sure the incision is protected. Maybe placing a small pillow over your incision so that the babies don't kick the incision. And then just lifting out the tank top and putting the babies right inside. One of the challenges with a cesarean birth is sometimes there's been a lot of extra IV fluid given to the mama to keep her safe during the operation. And so in that situation, her legs and feet might be kind of swollen. If you have swollen legs and feet, you might also have extra fluid in the breast. The way to overcome that is, again, with the hospital grade pump. That hospital grade pump will help overcome how the fluid might be squishing the tubes where the milk comes out, the ducts, and will help her get more milk more quickly. So skin to skin and feeding the pump. Knowing that pain medication is absolutely compatible with breastfeeding. Don't not take your pain medication. We want you to be able to be comfortable and able to sit up, able to move around.
Yeah. While we're on that medication piece, I also want to say that if anyone is taking anything for depression, anxiety, any kind of mental health, obviously you've talked with your doctor about it, but those are typically safe as well. Through pregnancy and nursing, just make sure that you're getting guidance from your doctor on that.
Absolutely. All antidepressants are safe for breastfeeding. And this is according to Medications in Mother's Milk. Thomas Hale is one of our nation's leading authorities on medications and safety. And he would say even some that wouldn't be our first choice of an antidepressant, they are still compatible with breastfeeding. So yeah, absolutely. Talk to your provider, but they are safe.
Yes. And you might find, if you're a mama watching this, you might find that you could be more educated on that than your provider. Sometimes just general practitioners aren't fully updated on the newest and greatest research about what's breastfeeding friendly. And so, it's good to have some of these other resources, like Amanda's saying, where you can check people that have studied and researched what is okay in breast milk.
Right.
Yeah.
Making sure that they say if you're not you check with another resource to make sure they're using the most current information. Nearly all medications, if we have a choice between mother's milk and a little bit of medicine in it versus not using mother's own, almost always we'll go with use the mother's milk with a tiny bit of medication that's in it.
Yeah, and on postpartum issues, if a mom's struggling with postpartum depression, anxiety, whatever, even if, let's say, the number one medication that is usually recommended for those mamas, even if that's not a good fit for that mom, it's better to have mom take care of herself and have the medication she needs so that she can be healthy and present and able to function. just like Amanda's saying, it may not be the first choice, but it's still okay. And there's still, it's better. You got to weigh the risk with it and really discuss and make sure that you've got all your information. But most of the time, you got to take care of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Great. So let's talk about pumping, because like you and I were both saying earlier, a lot of twin moms have to pump the first few months, it sounds like it's not just supply necessarily, but because a lot of times the babies aren't as efficient at getting everything that they need at the breast. And so how do we save our sanity? What are some good hacks or tips for pumping?
So one of the things I would say is in the early weeks, the whole idea of triple feeding is silly. We should feed the pump so we can bottle feed the kid and let them practice at the breast. It's called finish at the breast, meaning not spending 45 minutes on one baby, 45 minutes on the other baby, trying to get them to do a thing that their brain is not yet ready to do, and then spending 30 minutes feeding the machine and spending 30 minutes feeding each baby, and then it's time to start all over again. So doing it in the reverse, think feed the machine. So we're just double feeding. We're feeding the machine. We're bottle feeding the babies. We're skin to skin and letting them practice. Because the skin to skin and letting them practice with a full tummy, that's not stressful for anyone. But the idea that they're not taking it from the breast and we've struggled, and then we are struggling to maintain a supply, and then we've got to bottle feed. Because frankly, early babies are often challenging to bottle feed. So we have to squish the work. In our notes, I think this is a good time to bring up how to squish the work.
Yes.
In the hospital, they're going to tell you that mom's own milk is only good at room temperature for 1 hour. In the hospital, that is true. Here's why. If they have a baby that is early and maybe has some medical situation that is making them a little bit more fragile, they're going to be more conservative, not because of the milk, but because of the scenario. But in your home, your milk is safe at room temperature for 8 hours. Some of the newest stuff coming out is saying 24. So someday I may be saying your milk is safe at room temperature for 24. Right now, in your house with your stuff, your milk is safe for 8 hours. Meaning, if you're building a supply, you might pump and get, I don't know, half an ounce per each breast, and then set it aside, go do something else, come back and pump on top of pump. So when we talked about not putting warm milk on cold milk, we were thinking of a different food. That is true for formula. It's true for soup. Like we don't want to have warm soup when we put it on cold soup because the temperature change causes bacteria growth. Not with breast milk. That was silly information. So you can pump on top of pump until you have a serving of mama's milk. So let's say the babies are each taking 2 ounces. As soon as you've got 2 ounces, that's one baby's meal. Then you've got another 2 ounces. Now that's another baby's meal. You don't have to wash the stuff every time you use it in your home. Hospitals are germy, so we are more conservative in the hospital. Wash everything every time in the hospital, not because of the milk, because of the scenario. In your home, wash the stuff once every 8 hours. If a mama thinks she has to wash the bottles, wash the pump size, feed the pump, feed the kids, there is no time for anything else. So let's make the work smarter. Only wash the pump stuff once every 8 hours. That is absolutely true. The milk is the cleanest thing around. I think it's cool. Mother's milk can be used for lots of other uses. So if a mama has abundant milk, if the babies have bugs in their eyes, breast milk is great at clearing up conjunctivitis or pink eye. Even if they have a cleared a tear duct that's a little bit clogged, breast milk fixes that. Breast milk in the nose clears up congestion. So if you have a baby that's got some schnorfeliness is what I call it. That's a silly name, but the babies are a little schnorfely, putting a drop of breast milk in their nose. Not any other kind of milk. Saline will moisten. Breast milk decreases inflammation in the nose. So it actually makes the nasal passages a little wider so those babies can breathe a little bit better. It's good for newborn acne. It's good for if they scratch their little face. It's good if they had a little owie on their head, if they had internal monitors. Sometimes in labor, they can't track the baby, so they'll put this little device in the baby's scalp. To clear up that little owie, you can put breast milk. If the baby's foot has been poked a lot for blood sugar issues, put a drop of breast milk on there. It will make the wound heal much, much faster. Breast milk is medicine and it's food.
Those are incredible tips, and I don't think anyone really talks about that enough, or at least you don't come across that as common knowledge. And so those are great tips to make things a little bit easier, and it's convenient because it's right there. Your body's making it.
It's also nice because it's something only the mama can do. And if your baby is in the NICU, you feel so much like everybody else is doing the care, but only you can make the milk. And even if it's a drop, you can hand express a drop and put it on the baby's lips. You can hand express a drop and put it on their little foot where there's some owies. It's something only the mama can do.
Yeah, I think that's great. And the pumping information too, where you say like it's good for 8 hours. I'm thinking of the overnight scenario, like if babies are still feeding, every 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever that time window is, throughout the night and like all 24-hour period, then you have to get up and pump a couple of times while you're sleeping. And so it's nice to know, like, you can just kind of leave it there, maybe in the bedroom, ready to go. I'm thinking in particular through some advice that you gave me, but some stuff that really helped in the overnight scenario was that I would have double the pump gear. And I didn't have to use it right away because I knew it would last 8 hours, but I would pump while I was bottle feeding the babies so that I would squish the amount of time that we had to be awake.
Yeah.
And then whatever I just pumped, I would just leave sitting there ready for the next feed. As soon as the babies would wake up, then I didn't have that stress of babies are screaming and now I'm pumping and they have nothing to eat yet. So it was just ready to go. And I didn't have to go to the kitchen and heat up milk or, scoop out bottles. So squishing that time, I really like those kind of ideas. Do you have any other hacks about that?
Absolutely. Knowing that babies can drink milk that is room temperature. So like if you have, let's say you're ahead happily, you pump at midnight, and they're being fed milk that you previously pumped at 10 p.m. And then the milk you pump at midnight will go for their 2 or 3 a.m. feed. And then the milk you pumped while they were feeding that goes for the 5 a.m. And then maybe during the day you practice at the breast, but at night, just to get everybody back to bed faster, we don't practice the breast. That changes the minute the babies can prove they can take enough milk from the breast, that it's a meal and they can grow. So most moms get to stop doing that because eventually it becomes easier to breastfeed at night. When the babies are beyond birth weight, growing and thriving, and beyond 40 weeks. So really expecting maybe 3 weeks past 40 weeks, knowing that you have something to look forward to, that you're not going to be feeding the pump forever, that it's only for a short amount of time, makes it a little bit more doable. Mamas rightly panic and think, there's no way I can keep working this hard. The happy news is you will not have to forever. You won't have to forever. It's knowing that we need to get the babies bigger and thriving, and then we're going to start taking away the gear and the bottles and only pumping when it suits you instead of doing it because that's the fastest way to get the kids to grow and protect your supply.
Yeah.
Another hack I love is the hands-free pump bra is a great device. But if a mama can't afford that, because it is expensive, you can take an old jog bra that you don't care about anymore, and in the front of it where your nipple is, cut a very small hole. So you can put the flange of the pump underneath, poke the nozzle of the flange through, and hook your pump parts out the outside. So now you can't be hands-free while you're pumping, while you're bottle feeding. You might be bottle feeding one baby while your partner is bottle feeding the other baby. Mm-hmm. Exhausting.
Yes. But I did find, if I didn't have some sort of hands-free pumping option, I just don't know that I could have juggled all the things I was juggling. And so it's worth it, plus for me also double the gear so we didn't have to wash as often. We could just kind of pile it up and get to it like twice a day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you had said too with, I'm trying to think with it's not forever, right? That we just got to get through this hard phase with all the gear, and then you slowly step down. I feel like that was definitely my experience with twins too, was we were constantly doing steps in the right direction. Like, whew, all of a sudden, all right, a little bit less gear to wash, or whew, all right, a little bit, less stress here and there. And just step at a time, it finally got to that easier stage. But things were just constantly adjusting all the time, because I would have like one baby that was able to latch and nurse effectively, while the other baby still needed to be exclusively bottle fed. And so you find things like I would breastfeed one while hands-free pumping the other, and bottle feeding, and it's a lot to juggle, but you can make it work and figure out.
Finally easy for you? When do you finally feel like breastfeeding was easy and you weren't thinking about it anymore?
Well, definitely at 5 weeks for me. So my twins were born 3 weeks early, but one of them had some weight and feeding stuff, and so she needed a little longer to catch up. For the first 5 weeks, it was really, really challenging for me. Part of that was that triple feed thing, where I was trying to do all that until I figured out, you know what, I'm going to give up on that, and we'll do skin to skin when we can, but I'm just going to bottle feed, and that's what we're doing for now. And so step by step, it got a little easier. And by 8 weeks for me, I think that was about when my little one finally was able to latch fully and get everything she needed, and I could put away all the gear.
Yeah, that is a typical scenario. It takes 4 twins somewhere between 8 and 12 weeks before a mom feels like, okay. So somehow knowing that there is an endpoint, and that you won't keep doing this work forever. You won't.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about latch issues too. Is that something that often comes up with twins, or just in general, I guess, with breastfeeding?
Yeah, definitely. Well, definitely in general. One of the things about twins is if you've built a good supply, you're probably never going to go through the sore nipple phase that other moms do. So because they start out cute and unhelpful, they don't have a lot of vacuum. They can't create a lot of vacuum and cause trauma to the nipple in a way that a baby that is full term might. That being said, they also have to have, just like a singleton, they have to have good oral anatomy. So if twins have a tongue tie or a lip tie, that'll have to be addressed. In my clinical experience, if it is pointed out that they have it, I would wait until they're at least age adjusted 40 weeks before getting it released. I think before that, they're so tiny that we might not get as good of a release as if we wait until their term. So tongue tie and a lip tie is a big deal for a single baby, or for twins, or for triplets, for any baby. And that was something that lactation didn't know anything about. And this is where I have compassion for in-hospital lactation consultants. They know a lot about early babies in the first 3 days, but they don't know how this story ends. So here at the Mamahood, because all of you mamas are coming and coming and coming until the challenges are worked out, we get to see what happens to somebody who they said, oh, there was a little bit of a tie, but it's not going to be a big deal. Maybe it wasn't in the beginning, but it becomes a big deal. So now I have so much more experience with all of this. I know the questions to ask. And one thing we know is if a kid has a tongue or a lip tie, one of their parents did. And if their parents did, somebody's grandparents did. So we will have repercussions way beyond breastfeeding. You'll have airway issues, or those babies that have a lot of apnea. We should be curious about having somebody look at their tongue. So a baby that has a lot of apneic episodes may also have a tongue tie. The tongue may be one of the implicating factors. So yes, it's a breastfeeding issue, but it's beyond that. So same singleton or twins, breastfeeding shouldn't hurt. If it hurts, there's something going on.
Yeah.
If you have damaged nipples, there's something that is not right. And almost always it's anatomy issues. So they have a mechanical reason why they're injuring.
Yeah, so I know a lot of moms will just discuss that at the pediatrician, and sometimes they don't get quite the same breastfeeding support or knowledge or education on that. What do you suggest for that full assessment on, what's going on? Where should they go for help on that?
So one thing is we need to understand pediatricians and obstetricians and midwives, the way we do medicine in our culture is that the pediatrician just looks at the baby. The pediatrician doesn't watch how the babies fit with the mama. If the mama says, I have sore nipples, they're never asked to see the nipples or asked to watch it feed. So while they may say it's not a very big tie, well, if the mama has short nipples, it's a big deal. So pediatricians only look at the baby. Obstetricians only look at the mama. As soon as that kid is born, that kid is not the obstetrician's patient anymore. So because we don't do a holistic medical system, it's taken a long time for everybody to understand the implications of infant oral anatomy. So who's best at addressing that? It depends on where you live. But here in Colorado, pediatric dentists are the best at addressing that. They now understand, and we have a couple of really great ones here in Colorado that are sort of the go-to for everybody. Everybody knows about them. Everybody's going to the same couple of fellows. If you live someplace else, I would contact La Leche Lake. So going to LLLI.org and asking the leaders who in your area is good at addressing tabs. They will know. They have their ear to the ground, and they're going to know the providers that are having the best success. Mm-hmm. Going to ILCA, International Lactation Consultant Association, ILCA.org. That's how you find an international board certified lactation consultant in your area. But not all of us are created equal. Some of us have a huge depth and breadth of experience because we're lucky enough to work in a practice that's thriving, and we get to see tons of scenarios. Or you might just be the IBCLC that works only hospital-based, and you don't yet know what you don't know. So I have compassion. That was me. When I was hospital-based, I didn't even know what I didn't know. It wasn't until having a private practice that I was like, oh, crud, tongue tie's a thing. I didn't want it to be a thing, but it is. To not believe in tongue ties is like saying you don't believe in clouds. They're a thing. We can decide not to believe in it, right? But it is a thing. Whether or not it needs to be released for breastfeeding is depends on the mom and the kid, but it will have a lifetime of implication. So getting it released when the kid is young creates a better oral health for a lifetime.
That's good to know. And La Leche League can also help people wherever they are finding lactation consultants too, to get some support or just to have some guidance on what's going on, get some encouragement. Speaking of, Amanda, do you have a quick moment to talk about how other people, family members and partners can help support and encourage mamas that are breastfeeding?
I think especially with twins, if partners can come up with a list of the 5 things they think are the most important things to keep their household running, and almost never is the list the same, making a list of those 10 things and putting it on the fridge. So when people say, hey, what can we do? We'd love to hold the babies. That's typically not what you need help with. What you need help with is the list of the 10 most important things to keep the household running. Walking the dogs, doing the laundry, feeding you so you can keep trucking on. Being emotionally supportive, understanding that this is going to be hard work, and they're going to see you working really hard for the first 8 weeks and think they want to save you from that work. Instead of saying, you're not going to be working this hard forever. What can I do to support you through this hard time? So they need to be emotionally supportive, knowing that they shouldn't panic at how hard you're working.
I think that's really important because I do hear a lot of partners that really want to like save the mama from all this hard work or the emotions. Mama might be like just drenched in tears and like, this isn't, I'm failing or this isn't happening, whatever. And the partner wants to come in and say like, it's okay, let's just do formula, or, oh, let's just stop the whole thing. And I think that it's important for partners and for family members and close friends to all understand how to be emotionally supportive and to encourage mama and let her know, like, it's going to be okay. I know it's hard work. What can I do to help? Those kind of.
Postpartum hypervigilance is very common. So postpartum hypervigilance can be mistaken for anxiety or depression, but a mama actually has extra energy in the beginning, and she's obsessed with the feeding. So if partners can know that that's not something they should worry about, it is a normal way to be. in order to get all this work done. We should worry if it persists. If the feeding now is going smoothly and she's still obsessing about it, now it might be something that needs to be addressed by the therapist. But knowing that that's pretty much all she's going to be talking about. If they're expecting her to get back to her normal self, that's not going to happen for a long time. If they think she should be able to just go out away from the babies and not think about the babies, that's unrealistic. Mama, the prolactin is the hormone that helps you make milk. It makes you hypervigilant. I always think in the cave, if we were like, meh, the kid will eat pizza. I mean, I guess we didn't have pizza in the cave, but we weren't worried about how the kid was going to feed. The babies wouldn't have done well. So prolactin naturally makes mamas hypervigilant, obsessed with the babies and the feeding and the babies and the feeding. So it's normal in the early weeks, not normal long-term.
Good things to keep in mind. You've shared a lot of great advice, Amanda. You know, I'm a little sad that we didn't get to baby-led weaning as far as solids, because that is something that I'm passionate about as a twin mom, in making everything, like feeding the babies, less stressful and making things easier. So I wish that we had a moment.
We do part 2, where we talk about breastfeeding twins and the older babies. So what does it look like 5 months through 18 months? Because it really is. I'd love to do that at some point.
I think that would be great. Yeah. And I would love to have you back on and get more information and guidance for twin mamas for sure. So thank you so much for joining us today. I mean, we ran a little bit over time, but the replay will be on and up. So if you missed any part of today's interview, feel free to join back in and, see the replay so you can get some good answers. And
I'm available for Skype or phone consults. So if anybody has any questions, I'm easy to find. Amanda@themamahood.com. I would love to help you. You don't have to live here in Denver.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's good, to have resources for good support. And I also want to say to you twin mamas out there to hang in there. It can be hard, but we got your back. We're here to help support you. And so the more we can build up your community and your village, the more supported you're going to be and more successful and happy. So hang in there.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.